So is Star Trek Prodigy the best Star Trek series that has been made for years? I say yes. Stay tuned. Hey, it is me, Ronan, and I am here with a confession. I'm a recovered Trekkie. Yeah, I used to be really into Star Trek. I used to think it was awesome. And I say I'm recovered. I still sometimes will indulge, when I did a bit of DS9 recently, because that's great. Our man Bashir, what a great episode. But for the most part, I'm clean. And one of the reasons for that is, I loved Star Trek when I was at university. I loved the movies. I was really into the whole thing. And then it just kind of started to fall apart, which was a real pity. I think it all started when Star Trek Voyager ended and Star Trek Enterprise started, and that was like a prequel, and that was just a bad idea because it ended up, causing all sorts of continuity problems. And the thing I enjoyed about Star Trek was the continuity. And so yeah, Enterprise I enjoyed, bits and bobs, but I kind of stopped watching. And you could tell it was a bad idea because they had to bring in like the Borg and things like that, which were elements that should never have been in that show, given where it was set in the history of the continuity. So from there, yeah, Star Trek kind of like... I went to the movie theatre and I saw the new movies, and it was the first one was okay to crunch popcorn to. The second one I thought was a bit contrived with the whole thing of Benedict Cumberbatch being Khan. And then I really enjoyed Star Trek Into Darkness, that movie. I really thought that finally they hit their stride. The new cast kind of lived up to the old cast. I thought, finally, Star Trek is back, and that's when they stopped making them, which was a real pity. And in terms of the TV shows, like, I kind of gave Picard a real attempt because I love Star Trek The Next Generation. That's what got me into Star Trek. But to be honest, the plot was just so convoluted that I ended up just going to YouTube and Googling all the scenes I wanted to see. It's like, oh, I get to see Will Riker again. Oh, I get to see Data. And because that, to me, was the appeal of it. And to see Patrick Stewart back there, because I love Jean-Luc Picard. I love Patrick Stewart as an actor. But I just couldn't get into the plot. Discovery. I never gave Discovery a chance just because it was another show that was a prequel. And it really bothers me when Star Trek has made a very concerted effort to be like, look, all of the adventures from the 60s were canon. We have the DS9 crew running around in the 1960s in the Trouble with Tribbles episode. So it just really doesn't work when you have a show that's set like in that same continuity and time period, and it got all these super gadgets. And then the thing that Discovery did that meant I never really gave it a shot was they started like retconning stuff, and they started having the Klingons looking different to how the Klingons were that we traditionally knew. And I know they're doing a new show which is kind of like the Kelvin timeline Star Trek of old, and maybe I'll give that a shot. But for the most part, Star Trek has just not done it for me anymore, which is a real pity, because Star Trek is easy. That's the thing that I don't think people understand. The people who own Star Trek don't understand. Star Trek is really easy. You need a ship, and you need a crew of interesting characters, and then every episode they need to encounter some kind of weird science fiction problem, and the episode is about how they, as characters in character, deal with that problem. It's like the classic sci-fi format, and I don't know why they keep messing around with this and doing prequels and doing things like it. This is why the best Star Trek show up until this point has been The Orville. I mean, Seth MacFarlane did like a spoof Star Trek, except it wasn't really a spoof. It was Star Trek, just funny. And there was one of them, the second episode or something, where you had one of these characters who comes from an all-male species, and his daughter was born female, and he has to decide whether or not to have like the gender thing. As much as that sounds like a super woke episode and things, it was actually the purest form of Star Trek that you could possibly have. It was like an alien culture, and how do the human crew members deal with this alien culture, and it was brilliant because it was also a metaphor. It was a metaphor for, of course, people who were transgender. But for me, I mean, I thought it was a great metaphor for infant circumcision. It's like everybody with a brain knows that infant circumcision is just morally and ethically unquestionably wrong. However, it is so culturally ingrained that it continues. And to me, that was kind of like what the metaphor was here. This creature comes from, this character comes from a society in which this is the way things are done. And then the humans are like, well, that's different to our cultural norms. And so you have to question that. And I like as well how in that episode of the Orville it had like the ending wasn't what you necessarily thought it was. It was the best episode of Star Trek since Voyager ended. And it's not even Star Trek. It's just Seth MacFarlane knows the format and the structure of what makes Star Trek good. Anyway, I'm now 5 minutes into supposedly talking about Star Trek Prodigy, and I haven't even mentioned it yet. The other day, I was sitting with my son on movie night, and the other two kids were asleep, and he's like, "Dad, let's watch something." And I was like, "What can we watch?" And scroll through and install Star Trek Prodigy, and we had the Paramount Plus account, so I thought, oh, whatever, we'll switch it on. And it had no appeal to me at all because it was a kids' show. And it had no appeal to me at all because it was a bunch of aliens getting onto a Star Trek Federation ship. And I was like, Star Trek's easy. You just have a crew and a ship, and they go on adventures, and the adventures force the characters to act in character. And I didn't think it was going to be that. I was intrigued because it had Kate Mulgrew in it, who's Captain Janeway, who I love. Kate Mulgrew is a national treasure. She's a brilliant actress. Her books are fascinating, and like Janeway was wonderful as a captain in Voyager. Like, she was brilliant. Anyway, I digress, as I believe she used to say. But I was sitting there and we watched the first couple of episodes, the first 6 episodes of Star Trek Prodigy, my son and I, together late at night on a Friday, and it was brilliant. It was really, really good, and I loved it because they actually took the concept of what Star Trek is and what it should be, and they delivered. It was basically a bunch of kids from this ragtag mining colony find what seems like an abandoned Federation vessel, get in it and escape, and then instead of the holographic doctor that they had in Star Trek Voyager, you've got a holographic Captain Janeway, and she helps guide them. And as these young kids go on these missions go on these adventures and go from place to place and try and figure out their place in this universe, they learn and grow and develop. And it was interesting because like the self-appointed captain kid is one of these really tedious like American lead kids from a kids show. It's very 80s. Like he's a selfish dick, but he's cool, so it's fine. But the last episode of Star Trek Prodigy, the most recent one that came out, I watched with my son, and he had to do the Kobayashi Maru maneuver, which is the one from Star Trek Wrath of Khan, which is the test that every captain has to take that they can't succeed at. And at the end of it, this kid's like, oh, as captain, I have to think of the best for my crew, not necessarily the best for me. And I'm like, holy crap, character development, look at it. So, and that gave him an excuse to have cameos from Spock and Beverly Crusher and Odo. I love Odo, and Uhura. And it's just great. It was great to see. As me as a Star Trek fanboy, it ticked all my boxes. As a story, it was great as a self-contained episode, and it was great into this longer story arc that Prodigy is doing. They've got the formula right, and yeah, it's aimed at kids. It's a kids show, so you know I wouldn't necessarily watch it myself, but I really love watching it with my 8-year-old. No, sorry, 10-year-old. God, time goes fast, doesn't it? Yeah, my 10-year-old and I, we watched this episode. We loved it. We watched all of the episodes. We binge watched them. We loved them, and I'm really excited to keep watching it. And yeah, Star Trek Prodigy gets Star Trek right, even though they get it right in a completely unexpected way. So it's definitely a show that I'm going to continue watching, and it's made me more open-minded about maybe going and giving Discovery, a fair crack at the whip. And what is it, Strange New Worlds, that new show that comes out, and maybe I'll go and watch Picard again and see if I can get my head around all the clones and the androids and stuff. So I don't know, maybe I'm just a grumpy old man, but storytelling is all about keeping things simple, and it's all about emotions. And that's the problem with too much sci-fi, where they try and bring in all this lore and stuff. Yeah, but Star Trek Prodigy gets it right because they create this scenario, they have characters in this scenario, and then they test those characters every episode. That's what it should be about. And that's why Prodigy succeeds, where so many other Star Trek shows have failed recently. Right, that's my rant over. I'll make another video soon. Until then, ciao. I'm Roland Hume. I've sold 67,000 copies of my books. If you want to find out how I did it, I've got a link right here you can click. And otherwise, don't forget to subscribe. I've got more videos coming soon. Thank you.